Biggest deer. All right, so spring here, April. Yeah, 1st of April, I think. Yeah, 1st of April, and I like getting out and shed hunting this time of year. Shed hunting, and then also just looking for beds and stuff, and getting into some thick, nasty areas. Like, I know this is a bedding area in here. It's pretty nasty, but we got like some wet areas back in here, but they're easy to find beds because you can see like tons of hair in bed. There's tons of hair in that bed. I mean, and there's beds all over right in here. And this is, obviously these are doe bedding areas just because there's multiple beds, but I found a couple points on some like dry areas where there's only one bed, and it looks like this deer stood up, moved around probably as the wind direction changed, because he had a bed on like each side of the tree. So I know that that spot is probably a pretty good buck bedding area. But yesterday I found a match set from a nice little 8-pointer that we had last year. So I just like this time. Easy to find beds because usually there's a tons of hair in each bed. And you can kind of move through quiet to a certain extent, because usually spring leaves are pretty wet, and yeah, it's pretty easy to get through. So like just walking, and I can show you this too. Look at, let's see if I can switch this around. There's a good bed there. And if you come over here, there's another good bed right up against a tree, but tons of hair. Move over in here, another bed, tons of hair. So this tells me that this is a core bedding area for our does, which I kind of already knew, but I usually make a pass through here once every spring, and then we don't set foot in here all year. So this is kind of our sanctuary, the hub of our property, the middle, and this will probably be the first time. Well, it is the first time this year since last year that I'm going to walk through the middle of it, and it'll probably be the last time. So sheds are usually chewed up a little bit by that now, but that's okay. I'm just trying to find where they are and how to kill them. So here's another one, tons of hair, and you can see they're just on these high dry spots. Like here's another bed up on a little knoll right on the edge of the water. It's got multiple escape routes there. Got another escape route out there, another escape route down through there. So they can get away pretty quick. So this is a good area, and I knew that. I just kind of wanted to come through here and just make sure that they're still bedding in here and it didn't grow up too much. So I'm gonna keep chugging along.
To episode 2. In this episode, we are going to cover bedding areas. First episode, we just kind of did a quick breakdown of our property and kind of how everything lays out. So this one, we're going to jump right into it. We are going to cover bedding areas. So this first bedding area up here, we kind of stay away from. We're not in this area a whole lot. We do have a food plot right up here, but we don't hunt this very often. We know that there's been some mature bucks in here. We just kind of eliminate pressure up into this area. Pretty small bedding area as well. Another small bedding area, but we know mature bucks are in here, and we know that they're bedding out in here. So these bedding areas could, get all the way out into this area. We just know from walking our property in the spring that we're finding a lot of beds along this edge. So the creek edge also runs all the way along this side and cuts back in here. So they're bedding along this creek. This is super thick, super thick. This is also a big doe bedding area. So our creek runs right along this edge. I'll pull it up here. So the creek runs right along the south edge of this area. This is a bedding area. I've walked through here and kicked multiple does in the spring. We'll find 10 to 20 doe beds just in this little section here. So we know that a lot of does are in here, not a whole lot of mature bucks just because of the sheer number of beds. Then if we get into our next area, This is another small bedding area. We don't think this is a main hub where deer are bedding, but we know that there has been some mature bucks, but typically there's a lot of does that bed kind of along this north edge of this bedding area. The next one, this is the main hub. This is where we know the majority of our deer are. We do not touch this area. We do not hunt this area. We stay out. We hardly even go in there to shed hunt. We might go in there once and do a pass through here, but we steer clear of this entire area without setting foot in there all deer season. We never go in there. Just kind of leave it as a sanctuary, and we don't push in here at all. The reason being, we want an area on our property where deer feel pretty safe and secure, and why not have it in the smack dab middle where we can hunt them on all sides of that bedding area. The next one is the swamp bedding. So this area, we went in after our first year of having this property, and we cut a ton of trees in here, a bunch of dead trees, and just tipped them over. So you got a lot of cover in here. It's super thick, super nasty, and really wet. So there's bogs out here. So on those bogs, we find beds, and it's like one bed, and you won't see another bed for another 30, 40 yards, and then we'll find another bed. So we know that some mature bucks are in here. I've jumped a buck that we called Merlot. Our first year hunting him, I jumped him in here. And then the next year, I jumped him twice trying to get back in here to hunt. And I jumped him every time within probably 30 yards of the very first time I've jumped him. Not often that you can jump a mature deer 3 times out of his bed and have him keep coming back. And we know he was back in here because I saw him again this year on our very first sit on this property. So these are our main bedding areas on the property. This is the main hub. We stay away from it. We have a little clover plot here. We have another little clover plot here. This is going to be clover. This is going to be turnips and radishes. And the reason we did these is because we know these deer are transitioning from our first episode. You guys saw that they're feeding out into these ag fields, and we know that because we've seen them transition out through here. So our goal is to get them to stop here for a couple minutes because there's a lot of cover still around on all sides. They're getting in here, transition out into these bigger ag fields, but we're hoping to hold up a mature buck for 10, 15 minutes so that we can get a crack at him before he gets out onto one of our neighbors' properties or out into these ag fields. That's for an evening sit. Now, in the morning, we know that they're coming back into these bedding areas, so that's another reason that we have this clover plot here, just to kind of hold them up before they get in to this sanctuary of bedding where we don't go in. Hopefully they come in and get held up just long enough that we can get them deer in shooting light. So these are our three main bedding areas are right here for mature bucks. This is a doe. Majority of our does bed up into here, and they're just transitioning out into here to eat for the most part. Now we do get deer that cruise along this edge and are coming out into here, and then definitely onto our neighbor's property over here. So that's a brief overview of our bedding. Stay tuned for next episode. We're going to talk about some access and some clear cutting areas that we're doing just to create natural pinch points for deer.